Okay, so I want to start with the thing that got me, and I'll be honest about why. It got me because I walked straight past it. Twice. You know that woven strip that runs before the story? The one we've all trained ourselves to skip. I've skipped it. Well, most weeks, honestly. We did a whole thing on it last time, so I'm not re-arguing it here. Short version, if you missed that one, the weave isn't fixed. It gets restitched between episodes. Panels come and go. But this week it does something else. This week it kills a man before the episode gets round to it. Find the panel where the cloth turns red. Go close, and give your eyes a second, because it's stylized and your brain files it as decoration. There's a figure falling backwards into the stain, and there are arrows standing straight out of the body. Not cut down. Shot. The stitching around it scatters into little arrow shapes like a fistful thrown at once. Now hold that. Hold it all the way to the fighting out in the field, because that is how Ser Criston Cole goes down this week. Shot down in the open. And here's the part I like. The panel isn't hidden. It isn't tucked in a corner where only a freeze frame finds it. It's dead center, right in the middle of the frame, for a good second and a half, and it still slides past every one of us. So we sat and watched a man die in the credits, then we sat and watched him die again properly, an hour later. And almost nobody clocked the first one. I didn't. That's sort of the whole reason we're here. Down on the field before the fighting starts, there's a white-bearded man in furs standing next to a boy in a heraldic surcoat. He's one of the northern captains, the ones the books call the Winter Wolves. Greybeards who rode all the way south on shaggy northern horses, 2,000 of them, because leaving meant one less mouth at home and a chance at an end worth telling. Go close on his chest and you'll see it. The armor isn't a smooth breastplate, it's squares of metal sewn onto leather. And holding his cloak shut, there's a ring with a straight pin shoved through it. That's a penannular brooch. Real object, Celtic and Norse both. And it's exactly the kind of clasp a costume department reaches for when it wants to say, this man isn't from around here. No line of dialogue spent on it. Set him next to the southern knights across the field. All fitted plate and buckles, and you're looking at two different worlds standing in the same mud. The North keeps leaking into this story, by the way. We flagged it a couple of episodes back, names like Torren Manderley drifting in from the top of the map, and here it is again, wearing the costume instead of getting a scene. And I'll be straight with you, because I'd rather show a dead guess than sell a live one. My first thought was a house sigil. Crossed axes for House Dustin. No, wait. House Dustin's the one whose men lead the Northerners in the book, so that fit too well. So I went in close. It isn't. It's a plain pin. Costume detail, not a heraldry egg. The guest died, and we get to watch it die. Here's the one the book readers are already arguing about this week. Back to Fire and Blood. In that book, the arrows that kill Criston Cole come from a Blackwood archer named Red Rob Rivers, called the best bowman in the Riverlands. The book is fussy about it too. 3 arrows, and it names where each one lands. The show hands that shot to a woman we have never seen before. Watch the reeds after Cole goes down. She's standing in them, mail on her shoulders, dark paint smeared round her eyes, not moving. Her name is Alison Blackwood, Black Alley if you've read the book. Younger sister to a Blackwood lord who's already dead, aunt to the boy running the family now. And she's no background archer in there. Fire and Blood gives her a kill of her own. A bracken cuts her brother down, and the brackens are the neighbors her house has been feuding with, since nobody can remember why. She pays it back with an arrow cut from a heart tree, straight through his eye. So look at what the show actually did here. Red Rob had the famous arrow. Black Alley had a famous arrow. The show folded 2 Blackwood archers into one face, and handed that face the biggest shot of the war. And the men doing the talking got compressed the same way. On the page, the ones who ride out to parley with Cole are Garibald Grey, Pate of Longleaf, and Roderick Dustin. 3 names most of us have never heard in our lives. On screen, we get Oscar Tully, a boy we already know, standing next to that old northerner in the furs. Same move as the archer. Take the paragraph. Hand it to a face. Even the name of the battle gets the treatment. And it comes not from a maester, but from Mushroom. He's the one who puts about the name, the Butcher's Ball. And Garibald Grey, one of those lords who rides out, says almost exactly that it wasn't a battle, it was butchery. straight to Cole's face before it starts. Worth saying plainly because it changes how we read every one of these swaps. That book is written as unreliable history on purpose. Half of it is a maester shrugging and going, "Here are 3 versions of one afternoon, take your pick." So the show isn't overwriting scripture, it's choosing a draft. We bumped into that same habit last week. One thing told 2 ways depending on whose mouth it came out of. This is the same habit pointed at a battle instead of a name. So hold on to that next time you hear somebody say the show changed the book. It compressed the book. Different thing, and it's mostly about how many names you can hold in your head during one scene. The confinement scene. Rhaenyra and Alicent. The tightest few minutes in the hour. The one where Helena's pregnancy stops being a private thing and becomes a political problem. We all watch the 2 faces, which is fair because that's where the scene is putting itself. Look bottom left instead, and hold your eye there. Go close. You'll find a small table with books and papers, a candle, and sitting on top of the pile, a human skull, with the eye sockets and the nose opening, catching the light off the window. And it's not a one-shot thing that flicks by. Once I went looking, it's in frame from the first angle to the last. Sitting there the whole time, 2 women argue about whether a woman can be trusted with her own body. Nobody references it. Nobody so much as glances at it. Does it mean something? Honestly, I don't know, and I'm not going to invent a meaning to sell you. What I can tell you is that a real skull on a desk is a decision somebody made, signed off, and placed in the shot, and this show does not do that by accident. If you want the reading, it's the oldest one in painting. A skull next to books means whoever sits at this desk is being reminded how it all ends. Make of that what you like. It's there, and it's there the whole time. This is the big one, and it's over before we've settled into the scene. Helena's sewing. The camera drops right down onto the cloth, closer than it needs to be, and just holds there. Go close, and you'll find a fortress worked in dark thread, towers and battlements, and rows of little windows. Across the front of it, a deep red shape, nearly a heart, and, curled up inside that shape, something pale. A head in profile at the top of it, long-jawed, a limb folded across the middle, something tapering away below, and one eye, stitched in bright turquoise, on a piece of cloth where every other color is muted into grays and oxblood. That eye is the only real color in the picture. One stitch. Watch what your own eye does when the shot lands. It goes straight there before you've worked out what you're looking at. So who's curled up in there? Start with what we can actually count. One eye. And the only blue on the whole cloth sitting inside it. We've known what that means since the end of the first season, when Aemon pulled the patch off, and there was a sapphire in the socket. And here's the part I like. In this episode he wears the black patch. Every scene he's in, patch. So she hasn't copied him from life. She's stitched the stone. Then look at what she's put around him, a dark fortress. And the second that shot ends, the show cuts straight to Harrenhal, where Aemon actually is, sitting with Alys Rivers. I'll say almost certainly rather than definitely because nobody in the room names it, and the thread is stylized enough that 3 different people have looked at this and told me 3 different animals. But that's the reading I'd put money on. And think about what she's chosen to sew. Not Aemon on a dragon, not Aemon at the head of an army. Aemon curled up small inside a red shape in the middle of somebody else's castle. This is the sister whose quiet remarks keep turning out to be true. The nightshade last week was the clearest of them. She isn't recording something that happened. Go and look at it yourself, and then have a think about where he is right now. Watch what happens straight after that close-up. You'll almost miss it. It's that fast. The show cuts out of King's Landing, all the way across the map to Harrenhal, and the very next thing it puts in front of us is a chest full of dragon eggs, a curled shape in red thread, then a hard cut, and real dragon eggs. Okay, so nobody says a word to connect those 2 shots. No line, no music sting, nothing pointing at it. The edit just sets them next to each other and moves on, and if we're following the dialogue, we don't clock it at all. That's the line between a detail and an Easter egg. Quickly, because half the internet uses the words like they mean the same thing, an Easter egg is hidden and pays you for stopping. This is in plain sight and pays you for noticing what order things arrive in. Is that deliberate? I think so, because the 2 scenes have nothing else in common. Different castles, different plots. The only thing they share is a shape curled up and unopened on one side of the cut, and on the other, a whole chest of them, cold for 100 years. Alys Rivers opens a carved wooden chest with brass fittings and a band of leafwork along the front. Inside, packed close, dragon eggs scaled and gray-green, coated in dust. They're in 2 staggered rows, and if you count them, you'll get 5 clearly. What she says over the top of it is the real gift. She tells Aemond that his ancestor, Rhaena Targaryen, a different and older Rhaena, came to Harrenhal after her daughter died, grew old there, and that her dragon laid a clutch of eggs before she went. And that checks out. Rhaena Targaryen, granddaughter of the Conqueror, shut herself away at Harrenhal after her daughter Arya died horribly. Her dragon stayed with her there until Rhaena's own death, in the year 73 after the conquest. Only then did it move to the dragon pit in the capital. That dragon was Dreamfyre, the same one Helaena rides now, so the eggs in that chest are, by the show's own arithmetic, the eggs of Helena's dragon. And the edit put us in that room, one scene early, before Alys had opened her mouth. This is the deepest cut in the episode, and it lives entirely inside a name. Stay on the eggs a second. In the book, there's a famous theft. In the year 54, a woman called Alyssa Farman stole 3 dragon eggs out of the hatcheries on Dragonstone. She was that older Rhaena's closest companion, and almost certainly a good deal more than that. She ran, Pentos first, then overland to Braavos, the free city across the sea. She sold the eggs to its ruler, the Sea Lord, and used the money to build herself a ship. And she did the whole thing under a false name. The name she used was Alys Westhill. Now, the woman standing over a chest of dragon eggs in this episode is called Alys Rivers. She's the one we met at Harrenhal last week, telling sellswords the castle swallows the greedy. Rivers is a bastard's name, the one the Riverlands hangs on its baseborn. Westhill isn't a real one of those. It's an alias the woman in the book invented for herself, but it reads like a bastard name, which is very likely the point. Both Alys. Am I telling you they're the same person? No. There's nothing on screen that says it, and anyone who tells you it's confirmed is just guessing at you with a straight face. What I'm saying is that the writers put a woman named Alys in charge of a pile of dragon eggs, and there is exactly one other Alys in this world's history famous for exactly that. If that's a coincidence, it's a very loud one. So we left that thread in Braavos, and Braavos is where it goes cold. Elisa sold 3 dragon eggs to the Sea Lord, the man who runs that city, took the money, built her ship, and sailed off the edge of the story. That's the last anybody in the books can tell us about them. Now here's the other end of it. 140 years later in Pentos, another of the free cities, a few days down the same coast, a very fat, very rich man called Illyrio Mopatis gives a wedding present to a Targaryen girl nobody expects anything of. 3 dragon eggs, petrified, turned to stone by time. He tells her they came from the Shadowlands beyond Ashi, which is the far end of the known world. And the answer you give when you'd rather not be asked again. 3 eggs sold east, 3 eggs turning up east. We can all feel the shape of that, right? And, okay, I have to stop us right there because this is the part where a video like this usually cheats. Martin was asked, straight out, whether Alyssa's 3 are Daenerys 3. He said no. No definite connection. Possible they were sold on, possible they were stolen again. I mean, nothing established either way. And there's a hole in it besides. Nobody can tell us how eggs sitting in a Braavosi palace get to the far side of the world and back again with their history rubbed off. So it isn't a fact, and we're not going to hold it like one. It's a shape. Shapes are allowed to be interesting. What isn't a theory is what the camera does in that room at Harrenhal. Look at the hands before you look at the eggs. The chest isn't simply opened. There's sacking over the top of it, and she draws that back first. The way you uncover something, not the way you open a box. And on the back of her left hand, running down from the knuckle, there's a smear, reddish-brown, warm, sitting in a frame where every other shadow is cold green-gray. Nobody mentions it. There's no line about a cut, no line about where she's been. It's just on her while she hands a boy a clutch of dragon eggs. Hold that next to how this ends up. Because the next time anyone in this world is handed stone eggs as a gift, they hatch. And they hatch on a funeral pyre in the dark, with a woman burning alive on it, and the price gets said out loud. Only death can pay for life. blood, then fire, then dragons. So we get eggs and blood in one frame at Harrenhal, and a century and a half on, eggs and blood in one frame again. Except by then, the show says it out loud. I'm not telling you Alys knows any of that. I'm telling you the people who built this shot did. Or rather, nobody lights a whole frame that cold and then leaves one warm mark on the single hand we're watching by accident. That's a choice. Same choice as the woven arrows and the sewing. The true thing sitting in the corner, waiting, while the dialogue is off talking about something else. And the joke, if it is one, is on us. Rhaena's scene, a wide overhead of a round hall, and the whole thing is gone almost before it's there. We got our first proper look at the Vale and the Eyrie a couple of episodes back, when Daemon flew up there. So we've got the geography now. The mountain fastness the Arryns hold at the top of the map, the one everyone else has to climb to reach. This is a room inside it we hadn't seen, and there's a lot in that one shot, if you stop on it. Tiered stone benches curving all the way round. A ring of candles hung from the ceiling, a raised seat at the far end made of pale twisted wood. Animal figures beside it, a circular stone rim set into the floor, and carved into the stone above the central archway, a crescent moon. That crescent is the point. It's the Arryn mark, and the Eyrie in the books has a room named for it, the Crescent Chamber, where guests get warmed and fed after the long climb up the mountain. There's a second tell if you want it. The guard standing by the rim wears a sky blue cloak, and the Eyrie's household guard wear sky blue. Book detail. On screen, worn by an extra with no lines. One correction from me, since I went digging. I wanted that circle in the floor to be the moon door, the trapdoor from the original show they chuck people out of. It isn't. So what is it? Going close, you'll see stone rings stepping down to water, a sunken pool. Indoors, in a hall on top of a mountain, which is honestly a stranger thing to build than a trapdoor, and nobody in the scene so much as looks at it. The dark-haired woman doing the scolding is Lady Jane Arryn, and we've already met her. She's the one Daemon flew to the Vale to beg for gold and men, and came home with the sacks that are paying for the city's bread and the watch, so I won't reintroduce her from scratch. Here's the new beat this scene actually adds. Listen for the line and you'll catch her say it out loud. She's the one hiding the girl, and the words are right there for harboring you. Then she spells out the single thing keeping Rhaena alive. The queen currently believes the rider of Sheepstealer is dead. We followed that whole arc a couple of episodes back, Rhaena taming the wild dragon. This is the far end of it. As long as that lie holds, the girl breathes. The moment anybody corrects it, she doesn't. Which means the safest thing Rhaena owns right now is a rumor of her own death, and the woman standing over her is the one keeping that rumor warm. Everything else about Jane, we already had. What we didn't have was how thin the thread is that the whole arrangement hangs on. And now we do. Near the end, Helaena is holding a small carved wooden horse. Close up, dark wood. You can make out the mane and the muzzle. Now go back to Season 2, to the scene on the floor where her children play while the adults talk over their heads, and you'll spot one of the twins with a carved wooden animal on little wheels. Same kind of object, same rough carving. A child's pull toy. I want to be honest about the limit here, because it matters. I can't prove it's the same prop. The angle in the earlier season is over a shoulder with half a hand across it, and the newer one sits in shadow. What I can say is that it's the same kind of toy, in the hands of the same mother, and one of those two children isn't in the room anymore, and we don't need to walk back through what happened to the twin. We covered the rat catchers who hanged for it a couple of videos ago. The episode doesn't cut to a flashback, doesn't need to. It just puts a wooden animal in her hands and lets whoever remembers, remember. That's most of how this whole hour talks, honestly. Objects doing the work the dialogue won't. While we're on Alys, she's got a thin chain around her throat with a small pendant on it, and it turns up twice this episode, in two completely different rooms. First side on, when she's talking about hiding, then again at the window later, and this time we get a cleaner look. Oval, maybe teardrop-shaped, hanging just at the collarbone. I couldn't get close enough to tell what's actually on it. The light is behind her both times, and the shot is soft, and honestly I'd rather admit that than guess a symbol into it. But the point isn't what it shows. The point is that she wears it consistently, in a costume that is otherwise very plain. No rings, no brooch, nothing at the wrists, one chain. Costume designers don't hand a character a single piece of jewelry by accident. So here's a job for you, if you've got the box set open. Go back through the earlier episodes of this season yourself and check whether you can spot it at Harrenhal before. If that pendant appears on the same day the eggs do, that's a completely different conversation, and I'd love to be told I missed it. Okay, quick run of 3, because they're all the same trick pulled 3 ways. Go into the room with the barred windows, and you'll find a man sitting at a table. Pewter jug, candlestick, a scroll, and a small wooden model of a siege engine, beams and frame, about the size of a cat. Nobody says a word about building anything. The model tells us a siege is being planned, and it does it while the conversation is about something else. Then, a dark room, a stack of books and loose papers by a candle, and a figure in deep blue with silver at the collar. That's a scene about someone's fate getting decided, and the paperwork is already out on the desk before the decision lands. And straight after, in the hall, look at the walls. On either side of the archway there are 2 big framed panels, carved and painted, with figures tangled together inside them, lit just enough to see, and never once framed as important. None of these are eggs, and I want to be clear on that. Half the internet calls everything an egg the second they spot it. This is set dressing doing story work, the furniture telling us the plot before anyone gets round to saying it. Honesty section, because you should probably know what didn't survive. One shot looked like a reflection caught in glass, and a reflection in this show usually means something. Went in close, it's a window catching the light. Nothing in it. Out on the field, there's a close-up of dirty hands holding a small linen bag, and I was fairly sure it was going to be a favor, a lady's token, the thing knights carry into a fight. It's a plain bag. No embroidery, no letter, nothing. The northern brooch I already told you about, where I wanted crossed axes and got a plain pin. And the round stone in the Vale that I wanted so badly to be the moon door. That turned out to be a pool of water. 4 things that would have made lovely clips, and none of them were real. That's about the rate for what it's worth. We look at 20-odd suspicious frames, and 4 of them are just our own eyes filling in a story that isn't on the cloth. So here's where I land on this one. Last week the trick was words, the same thing renamed, depending on whose mouth it came out of. This week is quieter than that, and once I lined all the details up next to each other, I think it's a different move entirely. This week, the story keeps getting handed to us early before the plot gets there and hidden inside something somebody made by hand. Think about what that adds up to. The credits wove a man full of arrows into the wall before the battle had even started. In a quiet room, Helaena sews something none of us can agree on into the side of a dark castle. Over at Harrenhal, Alys sets a clutch of century-old eggs down in front of a boy and lets him wonder what they are. And that skull just sits on a desk through a whole scene about a pregnancy, saying nothing, reminding the room how it all ends anyway. None of it gets spoken out loud. The dialogue is always off doing something else, because we've all trained ourselves to watch faces, and faces are what talk. So the show tucked the true things into the parts we don't look at, the weave we skip, and the sewing sitting in somebody's lap. Run the hour again with the sound off some time, and you'll find the corners start talking once the voices stop. Take that one blue stitch where an eye should be. Or the moon cut over the archway. They pull at us when nothing is steering our eyes to the middle of the frame. It plays like a different episode that way. And a better one. For me, it's honestly the version I'd rather watch. And if you spotted something in here I didn't, tell me the scene. Which shot, and what's sitting in the corner of it, not the theory. I'll go and look.